So my name is Moss Libman. I'm a program manager on the Office 365 Information Protection team. And today I get to talk to you a little bit about our Office 365 data loss prevention solution, a little bit about what's new and some of the things that we have coming. And afterwards, it'd be great to get some of your feedback and questions about this. Before I get started, really quick, can I see a show of hands? How many of you are currently using Office 365 DLP? I see Office 365, excellent. How many have looked at our DLP solution that's integrated into Office 365? Excellent, great. Well, that's one, yay! So, good. Well, I'm glad you're here. I get to talk to you a bit about that. So, all right, to jump into it, data loss prevention in Office 365 is a solution that enables you to, it's a solution that's integrated into the fabric in Office 365 that allows you to proactively detect content with sensitive information, put into place policies that you use to define, well, here's what content is important to me, or my organization, here's how it should or shouldn't be shared, so that you can start to put into place automatic protection about potentially inadvertent sharing or inappropriate disclosure of information that your organization wants to keep within the bounds of your control. And of course, it's critical as you start to put your content in the cloud, as your users interact and are collaborating across with other organizations. So you need to have visibility into how is that information moving across my organization, who's sharing it, do I have the right policies in place to protect it, and so on and so forth. So it's important for you to have the control, empower your end users to be compliant, and at the same time have visibility into how your policies are protecting you. So with our solution in Office 365, we kind of focused on three key pillars or investment areas for our solution, and I'll talk a little bit about those and then some of the new things that we have coming. First and foremost is empowering and educating your end users. These are the shepherds for the sensitive information in your organization. And while you certainly will have policies in place that may prevent them from sharing content inappropriately, we find that when you include your end users in the secret circle and you trust them with that content, you empower them to understand what are the regulations or the limitations on how they should use content, they'll tend to work more responsibly for you. So including them in your compliance barriers is an important piece of that holistic picture. To that end, we have a feature we sort of call policy tips. This is how we provide our end users or your end users with a contextual notification. While they're working on a document that has sensitive information, we can pop a notification that tells them, hey, what you're working on, this might be sensitive, make sure you're using it in a proper way. Now, over recently, last year we released integration with Office clients, so Word, PowerPoint, and Excel all will consume our Office 365 policies and proactively notify your users if they're working on content. We also have that in the mobile clients as well as the SharePoint UI. One of the new things that we're going to show you today is we now have more real-time enforcement. So as users are in SharePoint, as they're about to share the content, we actually have an education experience and a policy enforcement that's right in that share dialogue. So your users understand, A, what that they're working on is sensitive, that it should be shared properly, and they're prevented from improperly sharing it if your policies have dictated that. And again, I'll show that to you in just a moment. In addition to empowering your end users, of course, you need to have those policies that dictate how you're protecting your content and allow you to manage that across Office 365. So what we've delivered is our unified DLP solution is intended to help you protect content wherever it lies in Office 365. Just this over the last couple of days, last week, we're launching a new modern version of our management experience, which simplifies configuration, makes things a little bit easier to understand what is the impact of my policies to my organization. And so if those of you that if you've had DLP or you have used our legacy solution, actually over the next week you'll notice a bit more modern of a look and feel come to you. So all of our policies, the intent of the Office 365 DLP solution is that you have one place to define what content you deem sensitive and how you want to protect it. And then you can apply that uniformly across all the different content locations in Office 365. To begin with, we support Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. And we're looking at other workloads. Yammer, Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams are all logical next kind of investments. But again, the philosophy behind our solution is that we want to make sure that as you define what is sensitive to your organization, you can do so in as least complex a way as possible and leverage that investment uniformly across multiple places where that content resides. As I mentioned, we have our new sort of modernized management experience. We also have some additional features that I'll show you in a moment around sort of an insight-driven recommendation, where using an understanding of how your users are using Office 365, what kind of content they're uploading and sharing, and then contrast that with the policies you actually have in place and help surface to you, are you properly protected, or are there gaps that you may want to be aware of? And then we also have our integrated reports, which allow you to understand the impact of your policies to your organization and understand and investigate when a given violation has occurred, somebody shared some content they may not have. Well, you'll have all of the audit data that you need so that you can really investigate if that was a proper use, or if you need to go talk to somebody about how they shouldn't be oversharing. And last but certainly not least, to tie these things together, it's critical that you have an accurate way of identifying your sensitive content. And to that end, we've built a sophisticated classification engine that's integrated right into the Office 365 fabric, as well as into the Office clients, so that we're able to identify that sensitive content as quickly as possible. As soon as it's uploaded to SharePoint and we scan it, we identify that sensitive information, and policy enforcement can be applied. In addition to, we have about 80 some odd built-in sensitive types, so we want to make it easy for you to get started for common regulatory content or PII-based content. But we understand you don't know everything about what kind of information is sensitive to you. So we have also just recently launched into preview the ability for you to customize these sensitive types. So now right now it's in XML, but you can ultimately define the specific pieces of data and corroborative evidence, and if there's a checksum that you need to run, or if there's a certain proximity for the content that you want to match, you don't have the full flexibility to define that yourselves and upload that into the system. Now, if you're familiar with Exchange DLP that was released around 2013, there's a similar feature there where you can also import and create your own custom classifications. And if you've made investments there, the good news is we're porting those on over into our unified DLP solution. So what used to work in just Exchange now works in SharePoint and OneDrive. If you haven't gotten there yet, then as you manage these through the Security and Compliance Center, those will allow you to detect that content no matter where it lies across Office 365, and you'll have a consistent matching behavior based upon the requirements that you state. In addition to customization, we're also enhancing the engine that we use to classify content. We're adding additional heuristics, the ability to do unique matches, larger dictionaries of content, as well as more flexibility on the proximity windows, and a variety of other capabilities that we're investing in, so that you have the flexibility you need to define the specific type of content you want to match. And some of these are, one of the big drivers for this is some of the more sophisticated regulations. HIPAA is a very good example of a type of regulation that doesn't have a well-defined content that you want to protect. It's not like a credit card number that's a 4x4 digit with a checksum. It's medical records. It's some terminology with some PII data and sort of some heuristics of some different kinds of information. So we're investing in our engine so that you have the flexibility to really group those different types of sensitive information together so that it will meet your more complex matching requirements. And again, one of the first ways we'll likely see that realized is in the HIPAA policy template that we're working on revising in the system. But all of the capabilities that we use to deliver those templates are also available to you to create and customize. So that's just a quick kind of snapshot of some of the things that we have coming, but I think it's probably a little bit more interesting to actually show you the real deal. So let me go ahead and switch on over to my Office 365 tenant. Here I'm logged into my own personal tenant. This is pretend I've been using Office 365 for a little while, and I want to focus you on this little pie here on the right. Now, what this is telling me is I have unprotected sensitive information. That may not be a problem, but ultimately this is a piece of content that our system has analyzed, detected that your users are using Office 365 to store different kinds of sensitive information, and we're contrasting that with the policies you have in place to surface, are you fully protected? So if I click into this, here we can see a little bit more detail about what exactly is going on. And I can see I have a set of 34% of my documents are unprotected. Using a little color coding here, I can see it's a debit card number and some passport numbers. Now, my other kind of content, we've said, hey, look, you're covered. You have a policy to protect that. You don't need anything additional, but you have this gap and you may want to do something about it. Now, the intent here is to make it easy for you to kind of get started, to turn on some basic protection. By default, if you just click save, you'll start to get some audit logs that you can go review over time and understand how that information is being shared. Or you can, right from here, turn on some additional behavior. You could choose, hey, I want to receive an email when somebody sends this content. We call that an incident report, so you can turn that on very easily from here. Or you could turn on that policy tip experience so that your end users, as they're in Outlook or Word, and they're working on one of these pieces of content and they're about to share it, well, you can notify them ahead of time and make sure that they're doing the right thing. So I'm going to go ahead now and switch on over to the brand new data loss prevention area. Now, this is part of that new management experience that I just mentioned that's rolling out worldwide actually this week. And so here I can see a little bit of insights about what's the impact of my policy. Are users reporting them false positives? Are they overriding things? And I can easily see the different configuration of what I have in place. And the recommended policy that I just configured, it's right here in that list. So I can extend or customize or even delete it for all that matter. It's mine to control at that point, or you as a tenant, you have full control over the impact of these policies. Now, real quick, I'll show you what our authoring experience looks like. Now, what we've done here is we have a number of different industry regulations that we've built templates for so that it's easy for you to get started for common financial, medical, or privacy regulations that span a variety of different regions around the world. And we've also made it easy so you can, if you have a specific type of sensitive information you want to protect or a specific region, you can also filter this list to really hone in on what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and pick let's see here. We'll pick the Saudi Arabia personally identifiable information. You can see that it includes a single type of sensitive information. Now, this is a built-in type that we built and included as part of our 80 different set. You can extend and augment this as you see fit. Now, when I click in, I have a few basic options, naming it pretty straightforward. Now I can choose where do I want this to apply. Now, by default, I think what I want is for this to apply across all of the different locations in Office 365. But I have the flexibility to choose or turn off different locations. That's up to you as you configure these things. And then there's sort of there's a fork in the road that we now have in our experience. If you've used our legacy solution, there was rules that you would build with conditions and actions, and you had full flexibility to compose those requirements. We still have that available for you. That's hidden under the advanced settings knob. But what we wanted to do is, looking at how you're using these solutions, we wanted to focus on making it easy for you to get up and running and turn these things on without having to learn about how do I compose rules and ultimately just kind of jump into that complexity. So what we've done is just tried to take, here's the most common things that a given DLP policy may want to do. I want to notify my users. I want them to be aware when they're working on sensitive content. That's very easy to turn on, and I have a quick way for me to choose who receives those notifications. I can even customize the text that appears in that notification. Another common paradigm, particularly with data loss prevention, is when somebody shares one credit card, that's probably ill-advised and potentially something that I may want to warn them about, but I may not want to block them. That's probably not a big leak of my corporate data. However, if I see 10 credit cards going out or more, that's a different heuristic, something I may want to take a different action on. So we've made it easy for you to choose. Do you want to take a different action based upon a high volume of content? And then do you want to be more restrictive when you detect that? As you can see in this example here, what this shows is when there's more than 10 of the content is detected, we're going to send the admin an incident report. So he's notified right away that that content has been shared that match this policy. And I can go in and I can turn on additional restrictions. So for example, I can actually restrict the person who's trying to share the content in email or restrict them from sharing it with somebody that I don't want them to. So I'm going to go ahead and drill into this, customize the access restrictions. And this is one of the new features that we're actually just about to roll into preview, is now when you want to restrict access to content, previously it was sort of a quarantine type of an experience where if we found a document that had been shared, that had sensitive information subject to your policy, and you said block it, well, we will block it, but a lot of people would lose access to that content, including your internal users. And we've certainly heard feedback that what you want is the ability to restrict that external access, but allow your internal users to continue to be productive. So now we have a new option, and this will be, once this is enabled, this will be the default capability. So you won't have to opt in for this kind of behavior. But now when a policy is, when somebody tries to share that content with somebody outside, we'll only restrict it to the external users, and the internal users won't be impacted. Like all of our policies and all of our actions, they support overrides. And this is something you get to opt into, but it gives you an ability to empower your end users to take control of the compliance and their education about proper use and choose to override that block if they have a business need. You can choose what kind of information they need to provide. For example, you can require a business justification, or you can make it easy for them to override the policy if it happens to be a false positive. You can just give them kind of an easy out. And again, these are all up to you and how you want to restrict or allow your users to share your sensitive content. Once you've configured this, all of our policies have sort of different modes. You can either turn it on right away, or you can actually test it out. And we see often people want to see what's the impact of this policy, how is it going to affect productivity, am I going to block the right or the wrong people? Before I turn it on, this test mode gives you that visibility. It's sort of an audit-only mode. So now you can understand what's going to happen before your end user's productivity is actually affected. And from there, it's quite simple. You click Create. We will then turn on that policy, distribute it across Office 365, and start detecting and enforcing the protection. So I'm going to go ahead and now switch over and show you what it looks like as an end user who has shared a document that before that policy was in place. So think of it this way: is somebody shared some financial records with a business partner. You put a policy in place that said, do not allow financial records to be shared outside. Now, in this case, Sarah Davis has received a notification informing her that one of the documents that she shared is subject to this policy. It's now access is restricted, so she may want to take a given action. And this is where our SharePoint policy tip experience comes into play. So as they select this, forgive the laggy conference room delay there, but ultimately what we're showing here is this is the policy tip experience that's controlled by the DLP policy I just showed you. And this text here at the top, there's default text that we include out of the box that should make sense, but you can fully customize that and tweak that to be whatever language you want. You can inform them about a given compliance policy. You have the full flexibility. And then there's a bit more information here. In this specific case, it's telling me that this document was restricted because credit card numbers were found. Now, I could report this as a false positive. This will send a signal up to my admin so they understand that this policy is potentially not quite applying in the right circumstances. Or if my admin actually turned on that override option, well, I could just click override here, and that block would be undone. There's no additional action that an admin needs to take to allow Sarah Davis, in this case, to complete her business job or objective of sharing this financial records. Now, as I mentioned, one of the other features that we are just now are about to release into preview is the blocking experience right in the SharePoint experience. So now, as a user, here I am. I'm TIFC is the name of my user here, but this policy is in place. It's now configured to prevent me from sharing financial data outside my organization. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose this well-labeled credit card numbers high count document and choose Share. This is the traditional SharePoint dialog. I'll go ahead and add my external email address. And right away, right here in the Share experience, I can see, first of all, Share is now disabled. And that is because I chose an external recipient, and I have a policy in place that says you can't share with external recipients. I could click this link here. It'll take me to that same experience. It shows me the policy tips so the user can understand why he can't share, if there's an ability to override, the same options to override or report a false positive are available. So it's a familiar and consistent experience for your users. But in this case, we prevented that disclosure of that information right away, so there's no need for us to go back and sort of proactively notify Sarah that that content has been shared. So let's see here. In addition to that, we also have a number of other investments that we have coming or have just recently announced. For example, if you're familiar with the Activity Feed API, this is a mechanism for you to be able to subscribe to audit events that are generated from your DLP policies. And you have an ability now, we've now included the DLP policy events in that activity feed. So that you can now understand the impact of your policies across your organization. If you have an offline system that you're using to feed in those insights, you can now use the activity feed to do so. As I mentioned, we're currently rolling out our new user experience and modern management UI this week. It should be worldwide within the next couple of weeks. We've recently released a custom classification feature into our preview program. So if you're interested in the ability to customize sensitive information types, I would encourage you to reach out to us and we can get you included into the preview program so you can access these features ahead of time, give us direct feedback, and help kind of control the direction that these go. And we have a number of improvements to our reports and a bunch of other great stuff coming that I don't have to show you today. Sorry, I'm just switching over here. But that's ultimately the our new DLP features that we have to show you today. And it'd be great to see if there's any questions about some of the capabilities that we just showed. Or again, I'll be over in the Office 365 DLP area if you have questions afterwards. Please come on by and talk to us about getting set up into the preview program so we can get you included. So with that, good. I'm sorry, the question one more time? Yeah, so support for the solution is through the standard Office 365 support channel. Yes, exactly. So as you hit issues, they come to us and let us know if there's issues. The product group's engaged with that support channel, but it is through the standard Office 365 support venue. So, any more questions I can help answer? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and joining us and learning about DLP. We look forward to getting your feedback.